Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Inside the Blue podcast. In this episode, we're going to be going over the regular season for the Dodgers. So this one will probably be kind of long. I'm going to try to keep it not running too long, but there's a lot of stuff to go over. So let's get started. So there's a couple important things in this episode that I want to go over. There's a lot of different points that I want to talk about. And they're the ones that I feel were the most important. So I'm going to try to cover everything that I felt was important to this season specifically. But if I miss something, feel free to tell me, feel free to comment. I believe you can comment on these episodes. Should be like a comment section or something. So if I missed something that you felt I should have talked about, go ahead and mention it in the comments. But I already have a lot in my notes. So let's start with the Dodgers record. So they finished the season 93 wins and 69 losses. So about a average season for the Dodgers, I would say. We've definitely seen better before. We've seen them win 100 plus games before. So 93 and 69 is a good season, but the Dodgers have this high expectation for them. So I guess in terms of that high expectation, this is just an average season, a good season. Their home record was 52 wins and 29 losses. So they were really good at home, obviously. And their away record was 41 and 40. So about even on the road. They basically were playing near 500 on the road. So that's how the Dodgers were this season in terms of wins and losses. Let's start with their offseason acquisitions, though. So before the season started, they signed Blake Snell for 5 years at $182 million. And they signed Roki Sasaki to a minor league contract. So those two acquisitions before the season started were huge. And a lot of people were like, the Dodgers were already strong, before this. They obviously had just won the World Series in 2024. So it's like the juggernaut just got stronger. That's how people were seeing it. And especially Roki Sasaki. A lot of teams were in on Roki Sasaki, but ultimately the Dodgers got him, and that, pissed a lot of people off. But those were two huge acquisitions for the Dodgers. They also signed Tanner Scott on a 4-year, $72 million deal and signed Kirby Yates on a 1-year, $13 million deal. So these were two moves that were supposed to strengthen the bullpen, and we will get more into this later on in the episode, of course. Tanner Scott being a big acquisition at the time. He was just coming off of a really, really good year with the Marlins and the Padres. So the Dodgers really threw money at him because they wanted him to be the lockdown closer. And that's what they thought that they got, but we will get more into that later on in the episode. So they bolstered the starting rotation with Blake Snell and potentially Roki Sasaki, and they bolstered the bullpen with Tanner Scott and Kirby Yates, and they were not done yet. So they signed Hye-Sung Kim for 3 years at $12.5 million, and they signed Michael Conforto for 1 year at $17 million. So this was basically to add some depth to the lineup. So Michael Conforto was not coming off of a bad year, but it definitely was a weaker year for him. And Hye-Sung Kim was one that, again, a lot of other teams were looking at, but ultimately the Dodgers signed. So these were two lineup depth pieces that the Dodgers really wanted in their organization. So those were the big acquisitions in the offseason. Also, returning players were Teoscar Hernandez, Blake Trinan, and Anthony Banda. So two returning bullpen pieces and a returning right fielder in Teoscar Hernandez, who was great with the Dodgers last year. So, of course, they were going to try to bring him back. So there's some three key negatives and 3 key positives that I want to keep in mind and discuss throughout the episode. So let's start with the 3 key negatives that I think are important. One was injuries, Michael Conforto and Tanner Scott, and specifically the bullpen as a whole. So those, I think, were the 3 key negatives that I will discuss throughout this episode. Some 3 key positives were Shohei Ohtani, Mookie Betts, and Yoshinobu Yamamoto, which we will, again, also dive into later on in the episode. So, with all this being said, all the setup, the season starts. The Dodgers opened the season in Japan for the Japan series against the Cubs, where they proceeded to win both games. Game 1 was started by Yamamoto. Game 2 was Roki Sasaki. And they, again, just swept both games. They took both games, and these games were broadcast at 3 in the morning, my time. So I wasn't able to actually watch these games live. I was asleep, but I was able to catch the replays of these games at work and watched the Dodgers absolutely take care of the Cubs. So they started the season 2-0. They then come back to the States to finish the spring training series against the Angels for 3 games, and then begin the home opener against the Tigers, where they proceed to sweep the Tigers there as well. And they also swept the next series and started the season 8-0. And they were the first World Series champion team to start the season 8-0. So the Dodgers seemed like they did not know what a World Series hangover was. A lot of teams suffer from that when they win the World Series the previous season and they come back the next season and they struggle throughout the season. Call it a World Series hangover. Sorry, my bad. And the Dodgers seemed to not know what that is. They began the season 8-0, undefeated. But then the injury bug proceeds to get the Dodgers. So I want to talk about some notable injuries that happened before the season started. So before the season started, the Dodgers had Clayton Kershaw, Emmett Sheehan, Evan Phillips, Tony Gonsolin, Brusdar Graterol, Edgardo Henriquez, and Michael Grove all on the injured list. So that's a good chunk of your starting rotation and key bullpen pieces all on the IL to start the season. So you can see why the Dodgers prioritized going out to get some bullpen help and some starting pitching help. So those were some notable injuries that were already in place before the season started. The first injury to really affect the Dodgers during the regular season was Tyler Glasnow. He goes on the IL on April 28th, and that is a big hit to the starting rotation. So not only does he go on the IL, Blake Snell goes on the IL on April 3rd, and Roki Sasaki goes on the IL on May 13th after just making 8 starts. So that's already more than half of your starting rotation on the IL. So this in turn leads to overworking the bullpen. And this is where the negative of injuries and the bullpen come into play for the Dodgers. So since there are so many injuries happening to the starting rotation, the bullpen is overworked. So by the end of the first month of the season, the bullpen pitched a total of 96 2/3 innings, which was the most in Major League Baseball at the time. So that's already a pretty big overwork of your bullpen. And within that total, they pitched on average 4.2 innings per game. So the bullpen was really getting overworked and had to be used a lot. And this, of course, leads to major fatigue, which I personally believe led to the bullpen woes that were happening to the Dodgers throughout the entire season. However, I do want to highlight one bullpen piece in particular here, and that is Tanner Scott. So, like I mentioned before, Tanner Scott signed a 4-year deal worth $72 million, and you think to yourself, why would the Dodgers throw that much money at a reliever, specifically a closer? Well, in 2024, with the Marlins and the Padres, Tanner Scott posted a 1.75 ERA with 22 saves across 72 innings. He had 84 strikeouts and a whip of 1.13. So his numbers were clearly really good in 2024. He was a lockdown closer for the Padres. And so the Dodgers paid him a boatload of money to be their lockdown closer. However, in 2025, he posted a 4.74 ERA with 23 saves across 57 innings. He had 60 strikeouts and a whip of 1.26. So you can clearly see that there is a big drop in his numbers compared to 2024. He just wasn't the same guy at all that he was the previous season. And his fastball velocity had dropped during this season as well, and that's possibly due to an injury in his left elbow that he was dealing with. So you can attribute the drop in velocity to that injury. He also was allowing too many base runners. He had a lot of walks and he had no control, which he dealt with as a Padre. He didn't have great control over there either. So he's always had kind of a lack of control with his pitches. So it was the allowing too many base runners, and we can look deeper into his stats to see why. So in 2025, he had a hard hit rate of 45.6% with an average exit velocity against him of 91.5 miles per hour. And the barrel percentage against him was 8.8%. If you don't know what barrel percentage is, it is the rate at which the pitcher gives up batted balls that are either extra base hits or home runs or just harder hit balls in general. So you can see why his hard hit rate was 45.6% with a barrel percentage that high. So that's not good at all. Comparing these numbers to his 2024 stats, his hard hit rate was 27.5% with an average exit velocity against him of 84.3 miles per hour. So that's already big drop. And the barrel percentage was also 4.7%. So that was extremely low. He had really low percentages in 2024. So you can see how much he has dropped off compared to last year. So yeah, he's just been a huge failure in his first year with the Dodgers. He has 3 more years on his contract, and we can only hope that he turns it around within the next 3 years. If not, this contract will go down as one of the worst for the Dodgers. So, with Tanner Scott not living up to our expectations and the bullpen being overworked and fatigued, one person in the starting rotation really had to step up, and that was Yoshinobu Yamamoto. And I want to talk about Yamamoto in 2025 because he was just absolutely lights out for the Dodgers. His win-loss record this year was 12-8 with a 2.49 ERA. Over 173.2 innings. He had 201 strikeouts with a whip of .99. That is incredible. What a season Yamamoto had. He only allowed 59 walks, his barrel percentage was 5.5%, and his hard hit rate was only 39.7%. So let me put it to you this way. If there wasn't a guy in the MLB named Paul Skeens, Yoshinobu Yamamoto would easily win the Cy Young Award this season. He just was a dominant pitcher for the Dodgers. He really stepped up and really became the ace the Dodgers desperately needed throughout the season. A lot of people out there really thought that the Dodgers had overpaid for Yamamoto or really paid him too much for when they signed him last season, but he has literally lived up to the hype. He has been worth every single penny the Dodgers paid for him. So not only did Yamamoto step up and become the bona fide ace of the Dodgers pitching staff, but they also were getting back a very important piece to the mound, and that was Shohei Ohtani. So we all knew that Ohtani was going to return to the mound this season at some point. So let's break down his timeline. So the last time Ohtani was on a pitching mound was all the way back in August of 2023. And the Dodgers naturally were very cautious in bringing him back and building him back up slowly. They really wanted to make sure that he was comfortable being back on the mound and really build him up to get him back to being a ace caliber starting pitcher. So he was throwing bullpen sessions from March through May, and during the late part of May into June, they ramped up those bullpen sessions where he was throwing to live BP. So during those first few months of the season, he was throwing, light bullpen sessions, and they ramped it up, and he was eventually facing live hitters. To then on June 16th, he returned to the mound, pitching 1 inning and allowing 2 hits and 1 run. So a pretty good return to the mound. It wasn't terrible for him not pitching for nearly 2 years. He only allowed 2 hits and 1 run. So that's really good for a return to the mound. But since then, he has posted a 2.87 ERA over 47 innings in his 14 starts, with 62 strikeouts and a whip of 1.04. So you can see how he was sort of rushed back. He, again, you can look at his timeline and see from March through May, he was throwing bullpen sessions and live BP. And in June, he made his return to the mound, his official return. So they kind of rushed him back because of the injuries to the starting rotation. Even though Yamamoto was the ace, they really needed that backup. They needed an extra support for the starting rotation, so that's why they ramped up Ohtani's pitching build up to where he came back in June. And since then, he's posted great numbers, like really, really good numbers. And he's also consistently throwing his fastball 98 plus miles an hour, which is a great sign, because when you have surgery on your arm as a pitcher, you tend to lose velocity, and Ohtani seems to have retained his velocity, if not gotten more velocity since his surgery. So that is a great, great sign. So let's go into the offense. So offensively, as a team, the Dodgers batted .253 with 244 home runs, which is second in the MLB. They had 1,384 hits, which is fifth in MLB. And in this offensive category, I want to talk about 3 people. 2 positives, 1 negative. Let's start with the positive. So my first positive is Shohei Ohtani, obviously. He batted .282 with 55 homers and 172 hits over his 611 at-bats. He struck out 187 times, but his on-base plus slugging percentage was 1.014 with 102 RBIs. So another outstanding offensive performance for Ohtani this season. He put up great numbers, MVP caliber numbers. He didn't steal as many bases as last season, obviously, with his return to the mound and his, starting to get back into pitching. He stole 20 bases, so not even nearly as much as last season, clearly, but he did steal a few bases. So yeah, I really wanted to highlight Ohtani's offensive stats. The next person I want to look at is Mookie Betts. So there's a reason I want to highlight Mookie Betts here. He was in his first full season at shortstop, where he transitioned last year from right field to shortstop. And that is incredibly hard to do when you are so used to playing one position and you transfer to a new position, let alone shortstop. Shortstop is the toughest position in the infield besides the catcher, I think. And it's taxing on you physically and it's taxing on you mentally. And during the first half of the season, Mookie Betts was not Mookie Betts. He got sick after the Japan series, and he really just wasn't putting up Mookie Betts caliber numbers. And I attribute that to his sickness, but I also attribute that to the fact that he was again transitioning from right field to shortstop full time. And again, that's very taxing mentally and very taxing physically. So he had to really make that adjustment. And he did in the second half. So let's look at his numbers as a whole throughout the whole season. He batted .258 with 20 homers and 152 hits. He had 68 strikeouts with an on-base plus slugging of .732 with 82 RBIs. So again, not Mookie Betts caliber numbers this season, but again, he was working full time at shortstop this season, and he performed very, very well. He's made spectacular plays at shortstop. Has he made mistakes? Yes. And honestly, everyone makes mistakes out there in the field. But Mookie Betts has really taken to shortstop perfectly this season. He has been a tremendous shortstop. And I guarantee you that next season, in his second year at shortstop, since he's used to it, we will probably see those Mookie Betts caliber numbers offensively boost up. We will see a resurgence, a Mookie Betts resurgence, let's put it that way. So yeah, that was Mookie Betts and Shohei Ohtani. I want to talk about now a negative for the offense, and I think we all know who that is. That is the bad man, Michael Conforto. So, another one of the Dodgers offseason acquisitions. He batted .185 with only 8 home runs and an on-base plus slugging of .617. His strikeout rate was 24.2%, and that is just absolutely terrible. I don't know how or why he was so terrible, how he could be so bad. Again, he wasn't coming off of a terrible year in 2024. He had 20 homers that year, which is only 12 more than he had this year. So the big drop off, I don't understand. I really don't get it. And they were running Conforto out there they were running him out there every single game for nearly the full 162. And I think it was because of the amount of money they paid him. But honestly, $17 million for the Dodgers, they could easily have eaten that amount of money and just DFA'd Conforto. I just think that they did not want to look like they did something wrong. But he was just absolutely abysmal and absolutely terrible. So those were the offensive stats that I wanted to get into. So we looked at the team as a whole. We looked at some standout offensive performances, both good and bad. Let's look at the pitching stats as a team. The team ERA was 4.29, which was 23rd in Major League Baseball, but they had 1,505 strikeouts, which was first in Major League Baseball, with a whip of 1.26, which was ranked 14th in Major League Baseball. So the strikeouts, amazing. They were first in Major League Baseball, but that is so weird looking at the ERA and the whip. So they gave up a lot of runs. They walked a good amount of people, and they gave up a good amount of hits, but their high strikeouts is leading MLB. So you kind of look at that pitching performance and you're like, yeah, it was a pretty bad year for Dodgers pitching. Again, you can attribute that to the injuries to the starting rotation and the fatigue of the bullpen. So the overall view of this season, it's good, but it's not great. We've seen much better seasons for the Dodgers. However, this season should have been a lot stronger, especially with the lineup that they have. You would expect this team to win 99 to 100 and even more games like they have in the past. They've won 100 games, over 100 games, with lineups that didn't seem as impressive as the one that they have and have had for the past 2 years now. And again, you can attribute a lot of this to injuries. The injury bug really did bite the Dodgers a lot this season. On September 25th, they clinched the NL West for the 12th time in the last 13 years. So another NL West division title, which is great. And they clinched a postseason berth on September 19th, which is their 13th straight year in the playoffs. And so that's where this recap comes to an end, because the next episode will be the postseason recap, where I recap the entirety of the Dodgers postseason. At the time of me finishing recording this, the Dodgers are currently playing a game 1 of the NLCS against the Brewers in Milwaukee. So we will see how the rest of their postseason plays out. I will recap the entirety of the postseason when it concludes. So before I end this episode, I do want to highlight one player in particular, and that is Clayton Kershaw. So Kershaw announced his retirement on September 18th. He announced that this season will be his final season and he will retire. And that is sad, but also expected. He has had a tremendous career for the Dodgers, and honestly, I do think that it is time for him to sail off into the sunset. This season, he did reach a career milestone. He reached 3,000 career strikeouts on July 2nd, and that was just a huge, huge accomplishment in a long list of accomplishments on Kershaw's resume. On September 19th, he made his final regular season start, going 4 1/3 innings with 6 Ks and only allowing 2 runs. So he ended the regular season with a bang. He ended it, I think, the way that we all would have expected him to end it, on a high note. So that's Clayton Kershaw. I hope he enjoys retirement. He has done so much for this team, and we will greatly miss Kershaw. And that's about it for this episode. So I hope you guys enjoyed this 2025 season recap for the Dodgers. And again, I will work on the postseason recap when the postseason concludes. So I'll see you guys in the next episode.